Maryam Henein,
an investigative journalist.
We're here asking people about the coronavirus and what they think.
I'm here in the Sinai Desert. Come with me as I investigate.
What does all your other work have to do with Google?
In 2018, we were getting 500,000 unique visitors, and we suddenly saw the traffic go down, down, down. I wonder if Google has any links to Big Pharma.
Thank you so much for this, Mary, especially this film, Vanishing in the Bees.
Do they know something we don't about GMOs?
There's a confusion and blaming just Monsanto when it's really we need to look at Bayer and Syngenta.
These poisons aren't just killing bees, they're also killing beings.
I'm saying that this is the virus that didn't cry wolf. Are you afraid of coronavirus?
No.
Graphene oxide, that's what got me killed on Twitter. Bans from Amazon, Instacart, Airbnb, Chase's bank account. She gets really deep into stories, those where everyone isn't willing to go.
Maryam, you have been hot on the trail of Charles Lieber since this case became public.
I'm not a prostitute or a parrot.
Do not let them turn you into lab rats.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Lives Here. I'm in Miami now, and I'm joined by Judah Ayers. And we are gonna talk about Amway and the links between the cabal and the globalist agenda. And so before I introduce you, Judah, I'm just gonna tell the audience that when I was starting out as a journalist, one of the first stories that I landed, a cover story, I believe it was out of Pittsburgh. It was Pittsburgh. It was kind of the equivalent in Los Angeles to the LA Weekly. I think the same publishers. And the best class that I took, I minored in psychology, was a psychology of cults class, and just learned about the parameters of brainwashing and did this cover story. My angle was looking at Amway and how it's divided families, because you know, ostensibly one person wants to leave and then they convince the person that wants to stay that the spouse is a neggy, and there was a class action lawsuit. And so regardless of the products, because I'm sure the products are, you mentioned some that are good, that's not the point. That's not the point here. It's just like I took
they're only good for funding the cabal's agenda.
And I bet you it does a damn good job of funding. So I'll pass it on to you just to say, it's like I took Landmark, which is a development started out of Est, but I never drank the Kool-Aid. So this is a lesson also in discernment. You don't throw out the baby with the bathwater, but what increasingly is coming to the surface is that I call them tries, truth mixed with lies. And
that's good.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate because I will hear people now, oh, this person, the truth movement, this person, the truth movement, but I know that they're compromised and they're not giving 100% truth and nothing but the truth. Okay, so maybe let's start with, tell the audience a little bit about how long you were in Amway and whatever you wish to share. And then Judah has an amazing presentation. I've wanted to interview him. I guess he approached me at a Reawaken tour, I guess 6 months ago or so, maybe more now.
It's actually about a year ago. I think it was maybe last July.
Wow, it passes fast. But after my presentation with Charles Lieber, and then to find out, we'll get into it, that Amway has its tentacles in transhumanism. Okay, so I'll shut up. Go ahead, Judah.
Well, as you said, you know, what's funny too is those articles that you did, my mind was so focused on trying to build my business at the time. I remember seeing your articles years ago.
Really?
And unfortunately, at the time, I was one of those guys who was trying to debunk you.
Really?
And write articles. But as I was reading things, I was like, you know what, that's actually true. And wow, that's actually true. And
Do you mean articles on Amway or what?
Yeah, you did it, that the article that you had, and you're writing about, the families and separations and things like that. And what's really interesting is that people within that business, that community, they don't want to acknowledge the truth because they have what are called their 19 player steps, and one of them is to be positive no matter what. Positive to a fault, actually, which means you stop acknowledging the truth. And I tell
spiritual
people,
bypassing.
yeah. And actually, it comes out of, we talked about this earlier, it comes out of masonry. And the way they cast spells and they do topics is being able to get people's mindsets, I would call them defragmented from reality, because now you've listened to audios, you've gone to conferences way past the time limit that a human mind should be able to accept knowledge. And then the mindset of, hey, here's what you're going to do. And literally you get to the point, we have what are called Monday night, Tuesday night info sessions where we explain the business over and over and over. I did that for 22 years.
Wow.
And prior to
And
that,
also drawing circles. Don't they say drawing circles?
everybody in the business, everybody, not a single person, they all know it. And for 22 years, when you're drawing the same plan, obviously it becomes in your mindset. But however, the point is that there's a small percentage of people who actually make money in the business. And I can't deny that. However, I tell people it's not good money. But the point is that the money that you do make, if you're not making money and you drop the bonus level or bonus scale, and you came down the point bracket, what happens is they still edify you at the top. And I think that's the beginning of a major, major problem with people, because what happens is that a lie told, it could be a white lie, over and over, over and over, every Tuesday night, every Monday night, at every conference, over time, sears someone's consciences. So once you sear your conscience and now you're denying the facts because you're doing a little white lie, well, those white lies turn into big lies. And I just got to the point where I couldn't lie anymore, even if it was a little white lie. And because I saw people in my downline of my organization who literally their families were being ripped apart because of these lies and trying to manipulate the bonus scales, that I just said, wow, we've got to make some changes, because I wanted an honest business. I wanted to grow an honest business. But to be honest with you, it's just not possible within their construct.
Was this your full-time gig of growing your business within Amway?
Yeah. So obviously, I went to Michigan State University. I was fortunate. I played football up there for a legendary coach by the name of Nick Saban, who is Alabama's legendary coach, multiple national titles. Actually, Ohio Brett and I both played for Coach Saban. His dad actually hired him as the athletic director at the University of Toledo. But Brett and I, we reconvened through the Reawaken tours, and we had some common bonds. And some of those things, as I started learning, I went to Michigan State, studied business and engineering. And when I got done with school, I got my first job doing what everyone else does, and moved through the brackets in terms of what happened with that, and saw the business. And I got excited about making money and not having to work a 9 to 5.
What year was this, Judah?
Gosh, 2000, 2001. So my dad, though, however, was in the Amway business for 20 years, basically prior to that. Wow. And so I watched this from a little kid. I can remember at 4 years old, them having Amway parties and selling the vitamins and doing all this stuff.
And using the mouth spritzer?
Yeah, they call it Sweet Shot. And,
right. Oh, yeah, that's what it's called.
It's probably toxic as all get up. But anyways, the point is that as a little kid, this was ingrained in my family. So I saw things. And over the years, what happened was, because my father, he broke away from it at a period of time in life, but he was involved in masonry.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And in my household,
wow,
that spirit was in our household, and it tore our family up.
The
I
spirit
mean,
of masonry?
yeah, and obviously at each level that you go, degree, they do rituals for all that type of stuff. But my dad was a good person. However, I think he used masonry so he could climb the ladder at Ford Motor Company at the time. And anyways, I just always followed his foot tracks. And actually, it was my dad who kind of opened my eyes a little bit to this business because he had some spiritual rubs when he got out of the Masons. And at the same time, he told me to get out of the business. And I was so focused on the business part of it, I just kept building my business and moving forward with it. And long story short, my dad, he got his life right, changed a lot of things. And I can credit him for probably a lot of the reasons of why I started to see the truths behind the Amway business, because a lot of it was connected to masonry
Wow.
and
So
kind of what
your
they do.
dad, what prompted your father to leave the Masonic Lodge? How?
Honestly, a real relationship with Jesus Christ.
Because again, on the surface, people who want to belong, when I was in St. Augustine, we went to suss out the Masonic Lodge just to walk by it, and there was a supposed 33rd. And I said, so can you accept any group? Or what if I was a Satanist? Would you accept me? And because they said all you have to do is believe in something.
Some God. Doesn't
Right.
have to be the God that you think of, but what
Right.
they're able to do, just like in the Amway business, they'll bring in anybody. But as you move through the ranks and you prove loyal to what you're doing, at each degree, what I would call is each degree, you're moving with a separation from God. Because in the Masonic order, if you understand what Lucis Trust is and what the UN is, they believe in the light of Lucifer. That's a hard pill for people to swallow. That's a hard thing. But if anyone understands and studies Masonry, as we talk about at the 33rd, that is one of the highest levels, but there's levels beyond that most people don't talk about. They don't know about the Malta Knights. They don't know about the Knights of Pythias. They don't know about all these little secret orders that have been controlling our governments for so long. And that's where I started to understand what they were doing with the Amway business owners at the high levels and with the corporation at the time in terms of funding a lot of those people. And those people, their agenda was for a new world order. And that meant the destruction of the United States. And
Absolutely.
so I know that's a lot for a lot of people to swallow, but it's just is what it is.
Judah, have you, just as an aside, have you read and studied about Tavistock?
Um, it sounds familiar,
So,
but
so, so
not sure.
Tavistock is started out of the House of Lords in the early 1900s, but it is about the long directional game. And so these people know that it's this new world order, this plan is going to outlive them. And
Right.
so us, the froggies boiling slowly in the pot, who don't have vision on the trajectory, might not see the bigger scope. But the House of Lords, and it's kind of like the Intel script writers, the think tank of think tank. And to understand that all these groups are connected and they use different vehicles like Amway, for instance, to peddle bigger agendas. So let's go back to Amway. So Amway, from what I recall, was two families, of course, and
Yep.
then the downlines go. Maybe people don't know what an upline or a downline. Maybe you can just share the foundation and introduce the DeVosses and whoever other. And of course, these people appear like they're Christians, like right wing Christians, right?
Yeah, that's the appearance. And in the masonry, they have what's called inversion. Inversion is basically they say one thing and they're doing completely the opposite. And I've noticed this practice through and through. And it's just really interesting. But if you look at the foundation, even of the company, I even told, so Ann Vandersteel, as you know, I did an interview with her. I went through my document that I sent the president and sent General Flynn. and copied obviously it was to the chairman of the board at Amway. The next day, they sent me a cease and desist order, and we're going through intimidation tactics,
The
bullying.
next day you sent the drive?
Oh, I printed it off in
But
terms of
literally the next day, how did they know who you sent it to?
because I walked into the Amway Corporation corporate headquarters in Grand Rapids at the IBUA board, and the gentleman that I tried presenting this information to, I thought he was one of us. I thought he was a patriot. I thought he loved our country. He spoke that way. And you know what? I believed him. I trusted my entire family with him. Yeah, right up to the point where I started looking into his donations to Lindsey Graham and Tom Tillis. And all these guys were supporting UN gun control. And I was like, what? You mean the money and the work, hard work that I'm doing is actually funding the UN and gun banning and the destruction of the United States? But they get up on stage and they proclaim to be patriots and they're so excited about this. But any moment that you say, hey, let's pull people together to save our country, they immediately want to change the subject. They want to tell you you can't speak about freedom, which they proclaim to sell with their business, that you're going to have freedom. And it's just a total perversion of the facts. And I think most people don't figure this out in the business. You get 1 or 2 years in, 3 years in, just like the Masons.
Right.
You go from your blue rank in terms of your degree and move your way up, your apprentice and all these things. You don't realize what you're involved with until you get so large, say in your business. Now you have to compromise your values because, hey, you got 1 foot in, and then like you said, we replaced my wife's income, or a large portion of it, to where she was able to stay at home and be a full-time mom. And so now you're kind of like, well, hey, that might be $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 a month.
Wow.
It's good income, but the question is now if you say or speak up, you're at risk of losing your income. So now what do? They tie you. The goal is to get husband and wife totally committed, and then once you're totally on their system, they own you. We call it the golden handcuffs. And it's really funny because they actually, in the business, they try to endorse freedom in their business, but ultimately, again, it's an inversion. They want you completely submitted to them, so you got no exit plan or exit strategy because you're financially dependent on them. I thought we're supposed to be independent business owners fighting for freedom. No, they're about controlling you, controlling your mouth, and allowing you not to speak the truth. And as soon as I opened my mouth, I started speaking the truth about things. Immediately, they went into disassembling my business and my character. And so, anyways,
and character. And how long ago? What was the thing, Judah, that alerted you to something else? Was it a symbol that you can show us, or?
Well, there's a lot of symbols, but
no, I want to show the audience some of these.
Yeah, there's a lot of symbols, but you get into those types of things. The corporation actually sits in Grand Rapids, Michigan, in Ada, and at the foundation of the company, the actual corporate headquarters is actually sitting on the Eye of Ra. And so is
show that? Can we show that?
Yeah, and go to bam. There you go.
Okay, awesome. Awesomeness. Okay, thank you for doing that on your end.
You bet.
Yeah, they probably don't expect to go beyond the surface, and then they could gaslight you. I imagine the gaslight you, like, you're making things up, and you're seeing too much into something. I don't know what they did. Did they?
Right. So, and that's the thing they'd always say is like, oh, you're seeing things, or you're too far
They
into.
did say that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Immediately you mention it. It's like, hey, how do we deflect this so that, you don't tell other people? So can you see it?
I sure can.
All right. So that's corporate headquarters. And if anyone understands masonry, that is the compass and square with the Eye of Ra right in the middle of it. What is the Eye of Ra? So we got to go back.
I thought it was the Eye of Horus.
Well, Eye of Horus, the Eye of Ra.
Okay.
It's the left and the right. So you get into that. But so the Eye of Horus, that is an ancient Egyptian, I guess you can call it religion. This is what the basis of a lot of, say, the Kabbalists actually believe and what they practice. And so once you go into Grand Rapids, you can actually see symbolism almost everywhere. And so it's pretty interesting. Corporate headquarters, if you ever hear, let's shrink this a little bit. If you ever hear President Trump talk about globalists or globalism, nationalism versus globalism, right in the middle of the corporate headquarters is a huge steel globe. And for years, I always wondered, I'm like, why is that there? And I noticed actually it's interesting is that there's part of the United States Air Force that actually has the exact same globe for their strategic command. And so I haven't done the research on that, but I would imagine they donated it to both of those groups that are controlling the New World Order. And so there's an agenda that goes behind even the groups that are part of that. People don't look at Amway as, hey, a multi-level business. If once you start to understand and break down what DARPA is, that whole organization, the amount of projects that have been going on, being put in place to control people.
How about the Brain Interface Project? I mean, that's the last frontier with DARPA.
Yeah, well, that goes back to, even Facebook, for example. Facebook, a lot of people think Mark Zuckerberg is like, the head of Facebook, and he created this whole thing. And when, in reality, he's just a family member of the bloodline in this group that's appointed in that position. I think originally it used to be called LifeLock or something like that, was the original DARPA program, and they used it for surveillance. And I always wondered why Amway was so in partnership with Facebook.
I didn't know that. They are.
Oh yeah, I mean, literally, they were creeping through all of our profiles, telling us what we could say, what we couldn't say.
Really? While you're in Amway?
Oh yeah. So they crawl through everything, trying to find out if you were selling stuff, but talking politics. This all started to happen right around 2014 and 15. And at that point, we started to see Donald Trump was actually getting ready to run for office. And they started implementing, actually, if I scroll through here.
Yeah.
This is one of their products. So the Eye of Horus, which Katy Perry, if you understand who Katy Perry is, I would say Katy is so far into things. If you ever see her testimony of how she basically submitted her life to Lucifer.
I haven't, but I've seen her eye malfunction.
Yeah. Well, you can find it. It's still on the Google in different places. She's crying, saying she wants to be out of it, but she keeps going back to the horse's trough.
Just to explain, sorry, just to say that, let's say this is not their real name. They get inducted, they get cast, they become a character, they get a name. They have to be beholden to that character long after, let's say they get tired, they want to go in another direction, the celebrity wakes up, whatever it may be, but they've signed a contract with the devil and they become this machine. Look at Britney Spears. So same thing with her. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, and I think hang on one second.
Sure.
So that product, in terms of,
what is the Eye Mojo? They're gummy bears?
Yeah.
Oh, for your eye.
It's actually funny because iMojo was a product, one of our new product launches for a new product that we're supposed to get all this, commission on and points and stuff like that. But it's an eye vision product. But again, somebody in corporate office had to know that they were calling it iMojo and put that eye in there. Okay, coincidence. Right. I get it.
Yeah. And then they're doing, this is actual Amway product placement with putting
it's off
the
their
eye
website
right there.
Yeah, it's actually through and through all their, years ago, sorry to be blunt with you.
Yeah, please do.
Probably 90% of everyone who looks at an Amway catalog is sitting in their bathroom, right? You're sitting there going through this and you see all this symbolism. You're like, why are they putting the Illuminati eye in your face? Why are they doing this symbolism everywhere they go? Again, I'd send it to my coach in my upline. He'd be like, "Oh, you're seeing things." When I knew he was kind of laughing at me because he knew.
Think he knew?
What's that?
You think he knew?
Oh, I totally knew because over the years he would chuckle and he'd say certain things. They'd take trips to certain places. They 100% knew.
Do people
This goes
not know that they're selling their soul? They're compromising. Like when push comes to shove, Judah, people to stay alive will compromise their spirit and their soul. I understand that they get threatened or they're gonna lose everything. I mean, I'm sure in Amway, once the Rona regime, everything got up the ante, right? Everything became more accentuated, more extreme. Anyway, I didn't want you to stop. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. Yeah, we're just we're talking about that. I mean, there's a lot of other things I can go through on here, but they started getting into um I think when the election started to come, I started to become more aware because they immediately sent us in our contracts. I can pull this up real quick.
You have
There's so much in
contracts?
here.
You have, yes, it's in a massive, Judah had given me this on a thumb drive and it blew my mind because, I knew one level of corruption, but I mean, it wasn't like you needed to convince me. I was like on board.
Right.
What are you showing me now?
Here, hang
What
on.
is the Great Reset? What? Let's
So-
educate the people on the Great Reset.
Exactly. So let me pull this up here. How do I do this? There we go. So as you pull this up, oh, I gotta go back to share. So Ann Vandersteel, she went through a lot of this stuff, but
I have a different audience, so it's
no, that's fine. What's interesting though is when you look at again on the Amway website in the catalogs, the new product, right? Hit reset. What were they trying to foreshadow here?
right. When was this? What year was this?
Hit reset product probably came out 2019, maybe 2020. And again,
Who does the marketing for Amway? Which firm? Do you know?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm gonna find out. I'm effing
That's
curious.
there's a good question there, and that's a good rabbit hole to go down.
Yeah, see you later, Miriam.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I started noticing they were having correlating ads. I'm one of those nerds or geeks, and I would do Google Trends or Google Alerts.
Yeah.
And the China material for China Amway, their products were messaging as well. And so they sent out this Chinese Happy New Year for excess energy drink. And I was like, what's going on here? And then COVID happened. And I really got awoken because during the COVID stuff, all these countries were shutting down. And say Wuhan was like the epicenter.
Yeah.
But Amway didn't slow down one bit. Matter of fact, they started speeding up operations over there. And I was like, holy cow. These guys are lockstep with these guys. And it was because they were developing a business that was going to be New World Order resistant. You think, okay, that's a good thing. No, it's not a good thing because that brings in the social credit score, which some people, if they understand what the congressional meetings were over Project Dragonfly and some of these other things that were going on, the next couple months in our contracts, they actually wrote into our contract, hey, you're not allowed to talk about politics or religion anymore.
And religion, even though they purport to be Jesus Christ fans and purporting to be Christian, right? Is that all over the world, even in China? they used to be a Christian. I mean, they have
They
supposed.
portray that. They portray that when you get into understanding what George Bush and Project Paperclip is, and the Cheneys and the Kissingers, they're very heavily involved with the Amway business, really from its inception, which a lot of people don't know. Um, there was a growth curve of excitement in terms of when Amway started, and immediately people don't understand. Like, for example, when Nixon was in the president office, there was a candidate behind him by the name of Gerald Ford.
Yeah.
Well, people don't know that Gerald Ford today, Mike Pence is Gerald Ford 2.0. The problem is the cabal didn't get their guy into office and didn't get rid of Trump. And so now they have to fall on their sword of what happened. And so you look at this Mike Pence card topic come up, and right now, even looking at things, it looks like Betsy DeVos is trying to run as a vice president, possibly because she's doing this national campaign everywhere she goes. Talk about no hostages as her book about children. And again, it's an inversion. It's a perversion of the word to get you to think one thing, but they're doing the opposite.
They're doing what they accuse you of doing, or what they're claiming not to do. Can you explain to the audience who the DeVosses is? The other image was of Rich DeVos. How is he related to Betsy DeVos?
Yeah, so there's a whole hierarchy in terms of the families.
Yeah.
There's the bloodlines. As you get into these types of things, my question to everybody is, the question should be, who are their parents? Where did they come from? Matter of fact, when they started the Amway business, a lot of people wanted to say, hey, man, they were poor. They didn't have any business. They were just trying to start a business. Well, in fact, they actually stole the business from a couple by the name of Jody and Kathy Victor, their parents, the Victor family. They bought the business, and then from there, they manipulated it into the Amway business model. But when they took that business, they bought it. So the question is, who were the DeVos's parents? Now you start looking into this, they're from the Dutch Netherlands. And so from the Netherlands, at the time frame, people understand where that is, that's Germany. And so after the war, all these people came into the United States.
Sorry, when was Amway created? Do you know offhand?
1955.
Okay, thank you.
So in the 50s. And so when all that stuff happened, you've got Eisenhower, you've got Gerald Ford, you got the Nixons, going into the 60s and 70s. And as this business started morphing, they started off slow, but as they kept graduating and moving forward, this plan, like you talked about earlier, this wasn't like an overnight thing they were going to do. The concept of the Fourth Reich, they said, hey, we failed a couple times before, so this time we're going to slow burn. That organization that you mentioned, these people planning all this, they said, hey, we're going to do this slow and steady. And if you even understand the, I guess what's the word, when they write a letter of their dedication.
Their manifesto?
Their manifesto was to say, hey, nobody will see what we're doing. No one will know what we're doing. It will be so slow, they won't even notice and understand it. And literally, that's what was happening. And they were taking the profits of our business and funding things like DNA modification, DNA changing, things like COVID, things like bioweapons, all this stuff, which if people in Amway knew this, they'd return all their products. There would be a class action lawsuit tomorrow. The thing would implode worldwide. And I'm hoping at one point the truth does come out for everybody to understand and see. Because if you love this country, you love freedom, it's at risk because of these families. So like you said, the DeVosses, as that stems down, these families, what they do is they actually intermarry with other bloodline families to accomplish the goals. So where does Betsy DeVos fall in this whole thing? So she is the brother of Eric Prince. The Prince Corporation, again, another cabal-run asset. That group, ultimately created what's called Blackwater. And I didn't understand that years ago. I started going, wait, hey, this is a cool thing. And hey, we're patriotically fighting in Iraq. And hey, these guys are running CIA operations and all this other stuff. And when it came to find out the CIA was just a horrible organization. Matter of fact, General Flynn's book here is absolutely incredible. I'll make a plug on this, but Fifth Generation Warfare is an incredible book. But what it talks about shadow governments. It talks about groups that are part of the Uniparty. It talks about all these groups. And so the Van Andel side is interesting because they went into...
So it's Van Andel is the other family. Okay.
Yeah. And so going back to this is that they were supposed to be this poor, meek group. And you look at pictures before they actually bought the business, they started an airline company. They started a couple other businesses like gas stations and things like that. Maryam, I don't know about you, but if you're broke, are you starting an airline business?
Nope.
If you're broke, are you sailing in a yacht around the British Virgin Islands by yourself?
Nope.
Nope. And what's wild is I think the Holy Spirit spoke to me, or a greater power, saying, check mark this. I just put it in the back of my mind. I'm like, it didn't make sense. I'm like, how did they travel the ocean by yacht and sea as young kids with no money? And then they bought a business. Well, today, that group, they own Hatteras Yacht Company. I always thought they owned this yacht company because of their riches in Amway that they built. No, these guys have access to the royal banking families. They have access to the Rothschild and the Rockefeller foundations. And it is massive, in terms of the banking cabal groups. This was a long play to infiltrate the United States of America. And at whatever point in being time that they decide to pull the trigger, if you remember George Bush getting up in I think the 90s, he gave a speech and he said, the New World Order will be a reality, basically. And he said, the 1,000 points of light. I remember looking that up early on. I'm like, Dad, what's the 1,000 points of light? What's that all about? Yeah. He's like, well, it's a masonry topic and blah, 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 blah. And I started looking in the masonry topic and I'm like, holy crap, they're talking about Lucifer. Oh my gosh. And this was before 9/11, right?
Okay.
So immediately when 9/11 happened, I'm like, there's no way those guys flew a plane into the Pentagon. There's just no way. So I started questioning that. My upline, hook, line, and sinker, 10, 15 years after the fact, was still saying terrorists flew a plane into the buildings in New York. And I was like, no, they didn't.
No, but we still, even though we still can't openly, the mainstream is still gaslighting us.
Oh, yeah. They're going to try to for the longest time. Matter of fact, I saw on Twitter today and on Truth Social, someone just posted, the cruise missile that actually ran into the Pentagon. And so it's in clear sight, that video, whether it was leaked by an anon or if it was leaked by somebody else, the video footage is out there. There's no denying it anymore. So who owns Raytheon?
Who does own Raytheon?
I believe it's the Cheneys and Rumsfeld and all these guys. So they took their own little pet project and tried to destroy the country. And so you look at this from a higher level and you're like, wow.
It's another brick in the wall. In the book of Tavistock by John Coleman, that was $5,000 on Amazon, Judah. And then they brought it down to $500. I found it and I offer it on MaryamHenein.com, the PDF, for a donation. And you have to wonder why it was $5,000. But he talks about JFK, and that JFK wasn't only about killing a Catholic king, it was about killing something in the spirit of Americans. Same thing. I mean, I wasn't around then, but the same thing with 9/11, that 9/11, of course, it was an excuse to write the Patriot Act, phase one of the Patriot Act, but it did kill something in our spirit because terror had reached our lands, even though we've been terrorizing other countries for forever. Okay, so
Right.
tell me if you know, was a lot of times they will like Monsanto had to fold it into Bayer because also it had such negative press that
Yep.
they changed the name. Was Amway always the name? What is the Amway? What is the Amway?
Well, Amway was supposed to be the American way. So again, if you look at it, I think it was an inversion. So they got involved in China in the basically the late 80s, early 90s. They patented their business. So the CCP wasn't technically supposed to be allowed to have them in. That was the story. But for some reason, they said this smart guy by the name of Steve Van Andel helped rewrite their business model in China. And they basically patented the business in China in terms of how the CCP wanted it to work. And today, 90% of the income from Amway comes into Amway China, or from Amway China.
Wow.
And what did they start doing? They started basically implementing all those new rules here in the United States. So, for example, this last 2 years ago, I started figuring all these things out and connecting all the dots. So I had a board. I put everything up on the board and just left it there. And next thing you know, I'd be like, oh, I'm going to connect this dot to this dot.
Right. That's awesome. Can you show us another slide as we keep going?
Yeah. So the United Nations actually has rules of how you can be able to do certain things.
Also, I'll tell the audience, for instance, like, let's say I use this analogy. Let's say you're an extra or an actor and you're going out and doing auditions. You want to do your best job and you land a part. You don't necessarily see how you play into the bigger picture. They compartmentalize. And so people are thinking, I'm just selling toothpaste. But you're part of an operation, you're part of funding an operation that has nefarious ties. Okay, so what's this?
This was just January 6th. This was another date that I
Deadly
woke up.
insurrection.
Yeah, I woke up that day because number one, I was there.
Me too.
Number two, I witnessed it. And immediately when we got home, gosh, just absolutely incredible. I won't go through that's the whole story in itself, but I got messages when I got home from my downline. They said, man, Betsy DeVos just came out and said Trump instigated the insurrection and is resigning from her position. And I'm like, that's not good. Like, wait a second. How is that even possible? Are you serious, Betsy DeVos? And so one of my downlines, her name's April, she sent me this message.
What is it? I know.
I'm just one of those people who's like, you know what? I want to do good. I want to help my people with facts and truth. So I started digging into this stuff and I was like, holy crap, she did say that. Holy crap, she did leave. Now I wanted to know why.
Right.
And there was a lot of things going on at that time. The Congress at that point, I think they ruled, the Democratic Congress ruled against the Q topic. So a letter basically said, you're not allowed to talk about this particular thing that's out there. And in one of the posts, I remember seeing something about Betsy DeVos. And I'm like, nah, that's a bunch of conspiracy stuff. And what do you know? I started running down that rabbit hole of learning about it. And what I uncovered was, oh my goodness. And so anyways, I go back to this and I'm like, again, this is just a question.
Right.
Just a question.
Right.
Eric Prince owns Blackwater. How many Blackwater operatives were in that crowd that day? I don't know. That's just a question. And so Betsy DeVos leaves the Trump administration. It's just a question. Ray Epps, who did he get paid by? It's just a question. I think it's worthy of research in terms of understanding things. But what I do know is that in Grand Rapids, Amway has a building that is actually north of it called the Gerald Ford Foundation. And then there is the Gerald Ford Federal Building, which houses the FBI and the CIA. And they're connected by tunnels. I was like, what? No way. There's no way. How is this connected by tunnels? Well, they're there. There's maps. There's all this other type of stuff. And I'm like, that should be illegal, number one, to have a business connected to a government entity in a federal courthouse. And there was just a lot of stuff going on. And I was like, wow. And actually, those tunnels actually connect to the Children's Hospital, which is the DeVos Children's Hospital, which also connect to all of the things in that city. And I'm just thinking to myself, man, we found a real Sodom and Gomorrah. I started to digress from there, but after January 6th, I started to see some of these things. I started asking questions. And so then I started digging into Betsy and the money that they started giving away to basically buy off candidates. And so I started realizing at that time, they were trying to impeach Trump. And of that, there was 10 congressmen and 7 senators. And you know what they all had in common?
What?
They all took funds from the RDV, which is the Amway organization for donations to political affiliates. That's just on the forefront. And then there's other organizations from Amway that have donated to all these congressmen. And so what was that? Yeah. But why did exactly to a T, every one of them, from Liz Cheney to Tom Rice to Peter Meyer, all these, they all had family members that intermarried into these organizations that are all connected to the UN. And I was like, oh my gosh. So the United Nations had a major play, and they're partners with Amway, but on their property, they actually have the Ford Foundation, which is actually in the form of a pyramid. If anyone understands what the keystone is and what the pyramid is, they started putting stuff together. But Mike Pence was a major advocate of speaking on the behalf of basically Amway and these foundations or associations or alliances, or they call them coalitions. And what that means is these are money groups, deep money groups from the deep state.
Or money laundering operations. They're not, these nonprofits, it's just a big, huge ass money laundering operation.
So I found this picture I thought was interesting. It's Mike Pence.
Yeah.
So Mike Pence is actually being swearing in his boss.
Yeah.
So the question is how much money is on that table there? And as you go through this, you start to realize all these other senators were being paid by this same group. So I started thinking to myself,
sorry. Do you mean that they receive donations from those are ADV, you said, is one of the organizations?
RDV, which is a Richard DeVos Foundation.
Okay.
But Richard DeVos and Van Andel Foundation. But my question in that was the money, like if you look at it, no way in the United States is there enough money in the business running around to fund all what they're funding. And so I started realizing the tentacles were spread out to other corporations and other people that were part of these groups. And started realizing, hey, of these congressmen and senators, Mitt Romney was a major part of the Amway aspect. Matter of fact, my uplines were all Mitt Romney fans.
Wow.
And when I started to learn that, I was like, uh-oh. And then I started to learn that there were major McCain supporters and Lindsey Graham supporters. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
So basically huge ass rhinos.
Yeah, and if anyone knows what a rhino is, Maryam, explain to us what a rhino is.
A Republican in name only.
So in General Flynn's book, he calls that the uniparty. And then there's state actors and non-state actors. These are people that, they're infiltrators. And what they've done is they've taken the Democratic Party that they infiltrated a long time ago and overtook. And now the rhinos are Democrat, basically, sitting on the right-hand side. And so there's very few real conservatives and real patriots within the Republican Party. And
Right.
so they call that the uniparty because now the Mason groups, these secret orders, control both sides with big corporate money.
So Tavistock is basically explaining that counterculture, Woodstock was also fake. Like both sides, they co-opt, they capture both sides, and unless you really are discerning, you cannot tell the truth from the lies.
Yeah, exactly. And so, like for example, here, this was something that someone found. It wasn't public information,
Yeah.
but the DeVosses sent out a letter to recruit and raise more funds by I think it was the Michigan Alliance group, which you think at one time is supposed to be a good thing. They have all these foundations and things where they hide money and move things and things like the Arabella group and just all this stuff. And what's really interesting is the perversion, even like the Kennedy Foundation, it's supposed to be a good foundation, but they actually corrupted it a long time ago, and they make it look like it's a good thing, but while they're doing stuff there, it's a polar opposite. And so they're almost like spitting in the face of Kennedy after he's been killed by making fun of him. But in terms of this, they raised money. It was $90 million for Mike Pence to try to beat Donald Trump. And DeVos gave $59 million to Mike Pence to win the presidency.
How much
So if anyone who's in the like Christian churches.
Sorry, I want to just see the companies, the Cotton family. I like 17. I remember this. And there's like Maroon, Cotton, Weisner, DeVos. Okay. All right. Thank you.
So you see those, they all own major businesses. You get into the Meyer families, the Huizengas, the Penske's and all those groups. You start to wonder, and a lot of these people, they claim to be patriot organizations, but a lot of them have sold out to the UN. And so so I just went on through a lot of research in terms of who the partnerships were with.
Yeah.
You start to understand John McCain and Lindsey Graham. And you dig into the homework and research on these guys. And Mitt Romney, they're the dirty dogs of all dirty dogs. And I would listen to Trump talk in his speeches, and every one of his talks, it's like he was talking in code. But you break the code down, he's talking about these guys. He's like, hey, the rhinos and the globalists that are they're worse than the Democrats. And I'm like, he's right. He's absolutely right. And so they're the ones, the henchmen that try to take him out. And so you look at all these topics, but that's kind of like that aspect of things. You looked at Mitch McConnell. People talk about all the China money he brought in, but why was DeVos giving him $2 to $4 million every single year for the last, I don't know how many years? Again, we got to have term limits in terms of what happens. But Mitch McConnell, someone asked him about January 6th prisoners. And he's like, well, no, they should never have been in there and blah, 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 blah. And you can just see the whole storyline of this false flag operation that they ran. And you know what? They're running their play.
Yeah.
Someone at some point in time told all these guys to run this play.
Yeah.
We got the media. We got the control of everything else. We're censoring everything else. And we are going to go ahead and run this new world order, financed a lot by the families, the DeVos and the Van Andels. Are there other families? Oh, I'm sure. But these two specifically, they're the names that no one talks about. And you're like, why do they not talk about them? Well, I tell them too, they didn't talk about the people that they hired either. Because they hired a guy by the name of Dr. Francis Collins to run their DNA modification lab called the Van Andel Institute.
Really? Wow.
I about threw up when I found this out.
Wow. We know Francis Collins by now.
Yeah. Well, Francis Collins, as you know, he helped Dr. Lieber He also helped Fauci, he was basically the boss for both of them. And everybody in Amway wanted to know, like, wait a second. There's supposed to be this stouch conservative group, right? Well, why in the world did Obama, in his term, hire Dr. Francis Collins to run the NIH? You're like, wait a second. Wow, there's something here. Dr. Francis Collins, wait a second. What family? Who's his dad? Wait, which country is he from?
Right.
Where's this family heritage going back to?
Yeah.
And it gets real ugly real fast. But these guys, as you know, tell us about Dr. Lieber a little bit. You know, Dr. Lieber, he was working on at Harvard, nanoparticles in your blood to track you and do all kinds of other stuff.
Well, he's responsible for pioneering the ability to grow these nanoscale wires inside of our bodies, and Harvard would like for you to believe that they did not know that he was running a joint lab, but I think that that's all BS. That NIH, DARPA, DOD, China, they all know. They're all globalists, no borders. But so tell me, the Van Andel Institute, what is their research regarding DNA?
So they pride themselves on being a DNA genome mapper. Okay. So that Van Andel Institute, I tell people they need to do more research. So when I went through a major health challenge for about 10 to 15 years. And in doing so, it was a form of leukemia.
Yeah.
And so I was studying, you talk about Monsanto, talk about Bayer, you talk about the venture capital groups. So I go back to who's the funding groups of these groups? Where is this money and capital being raised? And the names of Van Andel and DeVos would pop up in these venture capital groups through these VCs. And I'm like, that's not good. And then I started to notice on some of our products, the word DuPont on the box.
Wow.
And I'm like, oh my gosh, that can't be good at all. So I started wondering, like, what's in the products. Anyways, long story short, I'm not connecting those topics at this moment, but they prided themselves. So a couple months later, we get this test kit in the mail, and this new company Amway bought called Interleukin Genetics. And I was going through a health challenge at that time. And now fast forward, you just look at Interleukin Genetics, had what was called Inherent Health. This was supposed to be a product line to help people, right? They said, hey, we're going to get this kit in the mail, and you're going to swab the inside of your mouth and swab your nose, and you're going to send it back in. They're going to tell you exactly what type of vitamins to take. Oh, okay. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Wow. I was completely asleep back then for the most part.
Yeah.
I started looking at that going, holy crap. You can connect the dots to the COVID testing. You can go back to the pre-trial run of them being able to do things long before the mapping of it came out. Matter of fact, they jumped into, this was interesting. The DOJ is the most corrupt organization on planet Earth, from the judges all the way down. So we've all learned to know. And in doing so, the DOJ, the Van Andel Institute, was helping Dr. Lieber, funding him every single month, paying stipends, helping his research at the Harvard, what is it? What's the lab over there? The Harvard Bio Lab, whatever.
The Harvard Chemistry Lab, the Harvard, the Joint Nano Lab with.
Yeah, so they're helping with all this other stuff. And I'm connecting these dots going, oh my God, like this is crazy. So what's the DOJ do?
Yeah.
They fine the Van Andel Institute for $5 million. Basically gave him a speeding ticket and said, hey, be on your way.
Right.
Get out of here. We don't want to have any more issues with this topic. And at the same time, during the administration, nobody said anything about Betsy DeVos going to a Theranos COVID basically blood rapid testing system trial, which is probably the biggest trial to date in terms of all this other stuff. And the media put it right under the bridge. No one ever heard about it. No one knew what they were doing. But Betsy DeVos gave $100 million to run this blood COVID testing thing where they'd rapid blood test your blood. Here's what I would think they were doing. They were trying to plan to be able to have a COVID testing protocol for every airport, every business, every school, every place you went to, lock it down, and thank God it failed, or Trump or somebody else busted them, because that was part of them locking in their New World Order stuff.
I want to say, I want to say a couple of things so in regards to the DOJ, same thing that when they arrested Charles Lieber on January 28th, that it came down that it was, espionage or selling IP or giving IP as part of the Thousands Projects plan. And it seemed like, oh, look, the DOJ is going to crack down. But over 3 years, it got distilled. And then you find out, oh, 2 days already served and you're on your way. So it's the semblance of justice. And in fact, under Trump, there was the China Initiative. And then under Joey B., they called it a colossal blunder and they 404 the entire initiative. Okay, then as regards to Theranos, I believe, and I think Anne in your interview says they kind of, I believe, Zach Voorhees also believes that they kind of threw her under the bus. And let's not forget who sat on the board of the Theranos.
Yeah, DeVos, General Maddox, Henry Kissinger.
So did they get the technology and then throw her under the bus and made it seem that she was a fake, that maybe she was the front line? Because if you see how they build her up, she becomes the face on magazines, and she's like the female Steve Jobs, and then they crash her. And is she in on it? Do they throw her under the bus? But yeah, when the hearing, I'm sorry that I wasn't able to cover the ins and outs of what the hell was really going on there, but that technology seemed to be foiled, or they said that she was a liar. But was she a liar?
I think, no, personally, there could be more investigation on this, but if you look at her family, who's her family, where that goes back to, I think in California and some other places, Mark Zuckerberg, Facebook. Did he start Facebook? No. I think it was the same. They run these repeat plays all over and over and over. Yeah. And honestly, I think she was the fall guy in the project. Did she know a lot? I think 100%. Yeah. But again, she took the fall on everything.
And she's pregnant. Maybe she even had her baby. Like during the trial, it's like, oh, you're going to go to jail and give birth in jail? Okay.
Yeah. And it's just wild. I mean, so as you know, they set these people up and they do these types of things to be able to have the fall of what they're doing. And go back to here again. So who ran the campaigns for George Bush? Who helped out with the campaigns? Standing right there. Who's trying to run for vice president? Probably with Mike Pence or Ron DeSantis now. Right there. And, she helped out with all these things, and they're connected to all these organizations. And I couldn't figure out for the longest time, it always puzzled me. I'm like, you go up to the corporate headquarters. I've been there multiple times. I grew up in Michigan. So, in Michigan, it was, hey, if you wanted to get some freedom or whatnot, you could start the Amway business and work your butt off and do all these types of things. And I just remember that. But I remember walking into the corporate headquarters, and this picture's on the wall.
This is an iconic picture. If you know Amway, this is the yeah.
But why was it always focused on China? Is my question. I always had in my head. I'm like, shouldn't America be up there? And it was always on China, and I was like, interesting. And all the focus we ever talked about, the growth, all those sort of types, it's in China, it's China, it's China. And it's because they knew what their plan was, because that's what Henry Kissinger was all about. And so where things kind of just spiraled out of control in terms of understanding this. The people they hired, the groups, Steve Van Andel ran the entire U.S. Chamber of Commerce. And if you understand that group in terms of what they do, it's the most prestigious position, but basically control position
You have
in
to be a
business.
Mason to be in the Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, that whatever, that's just a rumor, whatever." I'm one of these nerds, and I actually had a friend of mine who's he's very nerdy. He used to be a high level naval guy, intelligence and whatnot, and sent me a link, and he said, "Hey, you got to check this out." And I'm like, "What's this?" Built into their website, because it's interesting how the laws of the kingdom work.
Yeah.
God has laws. This is what I believe. The thing is Lucifer cannot do certain things. Evil cannot do certain things because there's laws in Deuteronomy that were put in place that you can't do something unless you actually show it or tell people. And so the way they get around it is by putting it in your face and telling you. And so, again, it would be illegal for them to post this, not post it, but they post it on their website. That's my belief.
Yeah.
But they post it on their website. It shows you can't find it from the normal page, but it's in the code. So if you know how to break down a code of a website and go into the HTML, you can pull up this web page, which is right here on the site, and it shows you have to be a 33rd degree Mason to be part of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce.
That's good for you. That's awesome that you got this page.
So it's in there.
It's archived.
And so we tell people, what's the chamber? What is a crypt? These are all go back to these evil topics in terms of the Lucis Trust and obviously
I mean, crypt is a tomb. What is
it is a tomb.
Yeah.
You go into these rituals. What do these rituals do? They have all kinds of stuff with caskets and just all kinds. It's nasty. It's garbage. But they take these blood oaths to these Kabbalists, and it's what they believe. People go into understand this whole thing. I sent this out to my upline again. I'm like, why in the world, at the time of COVID happening, was Justin Trudeau of Canada bringing in all the Chinese diamonds? I
didn't know that.
Yeah. And about, I think, a week or so after that, he implemented the UN gun ban in Canada. So I don't know what they had plans for. Maybe there was other things thwarted here in the United States. We saw the missile launch over Hawaii. We saw the Las Vegas shootings. We saw Sandy Hook. There's a lot of things that we saw. But every time, I think there was a hedge of protection around the United States. But I think they were planning I think they were planning to get rid of the United States, and these people, their businesses were going to thrive, right?
Yeah.
They're giving them the ability to maybe take over North America. I don't know. But again, why would Justin Trudeau bring these people all the way from China when all of us in North America are right here, right over the border? And if he wanted to have a meeting with the leadership, and the reason why he didn't is because those guys, they think differently. In the United States, we're focused on freedom. So that was just kind of an interesting plot. I started really digging around, and I started wondering, like, how in the world is Bill Clinton speaking for Amway? How is the Clinton Foundation involved in Amway? And I noticed that George Bush, Bill Clinton, they would be doing Amway talks. And I'm like, just scratching my head for the longest time going, this is bizarre. It's absolutely weird. And so again, I'd ask questions to my upline and they'd be like, oh, don't worry about that. That's just focus on your business. Build your dream. And I'd be like, okay, well, I'll keep moving forward. At this time, I was committed, right? I had a couple $1,000 a month coming in. I'm like, hey, I'm moving forward and all this type of stuff. And so I wasn't willing to look at what people call negative. negative
Yeah,
information.
I mean, imagine thinking like you're a neggy. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, how could Christian tenants are not you're not supposed to break up companies or families or break up a family over a company, right? So yeah. Anyway, go on.
Yeah, well, as you know, and I've listened to your stuff, these guys are all about the money, and it's not about family. And they will compromise every value they have to make sure that their plan advances and that their income advances. And it's just really interesting. So I get to go to one of my first Clay Clark events, and I hear him talking about the World Economic Forum. And so I started doing some research on this other aspects, and I started realizing that Amway was hiring people from the World Economic Forum. And this lady ran all of the Asian Pacific. And I was like, oh my God, that's not good. And so I started putting the rest of this stuff together. And
Oh,
if you
look,
look
it's oval.
yeah, so all the transhuman agenda stuff. And as you
Yeah.
know, you and I were just at the Trump Doral,
Yes.
and that event. Did you stick around for the movie?
I could not sit in that cold room, but I worked on
So
the first pandemic. Are you
they got a
talking
chance
about
to
pandemic?
play. They got a chance to play the Great Awakening, which
Yeah.
is basically the third version of what's the name of the movie called?
Pandemic.
Plan-
I
Plandemic
worked on
3.
pandemic. Yes.
So Plandemic 3, when it comes out,
Yes.
was so powerful. It was so good. It was documented so well that when people see it, I think it's going to wake up a whole bunch of more people because it is so revealing. And when you understand what these guys were doing, Charles Schwab, basically a descendant from the Nazi Reich, orchestrating all this stuff, it's very clear to see what they were trying to do. So the connections, obviously, in the United States. This is in D.C., by the way. And so people understand.
What's that shot with the sabers or swords? What
Yeah,
is
that's just one of the rituals that they have.
Yeah, you know about the cornerstone ritual. I mean, George Floyd was a cornerstone ritual.
Yeah, and so even that whole thing when that came out, you did an incredible documentary on those topics. And what I'd like to link going back and forth to this is
Yeah.
we'll show through here, Amway funded BLM for a large sum of money. And in that funding of that, they orchestrated and had these things planned. Matter of fact, I remember the night my town was burning down, Columbus, Ohio. They had Antifa there. They had Black Lives Matter there. They were doing all this other stuff. They burned all these stores, smashed all the windows, just like in New York City, just like in Minnesota. And then obviously the George Floyd thing broke out to divide America. And these
The
guys,
tattoo on his chest,
Yep.
the eagles is on George Floyd's. Yeah.
Yep. And if people understand what that means, LeBron James, again, has the same thing.
It does?
Yep. Right on his chest, right here. You can look it up. And actually, before every single basketball game, he does his ritual in terms of his symbology, pleading his allegiance to Baal.
What does
And
he do?
He's not shy about it. I tell people to look it up. It's pretty prevalent out there, but
He does something as the game starts. He does some little touches his
at the
chest
beginning
or
of every single
something.
game. At the beginning of every single game, we'll just call it the Illuminati ritual,
Okay.
because he's not his own man, and at some point they compromised it somewhere for money, fame, power. He's a controlled asset, and that gets into, if people understand, the CIA has all kinds of organizations. And these guys can't do their own thing. The CAA, or is it CCA?
CAA? You mean for Hollywood?
Yeah. So that group is funded by the CIA, which is funded by all these other groups to be able to control your mindset, what you see on a TV, your sports athletes, all this other type of stuff. they control it from a political standpoint of what they were trying to do with the New World Order. And it's just a very interesting thing. So this gets into the banking side of stuff. And you start realizing, Barclay Bank, its hierarchy goes to the British Royal Crown. Mitt Romney and that whole group is involved in all that stuff. But I started looking in the title deeds. So Amway has an island, just happens to be next door to where?
Epstein Island. Right?
So I always tell people, maybe you didn't see the people who were on the list who had to fly there.
Yeah.
But if you live next door, do you ask for permission when you walk over to your next door neighbor?
No. Do I?
Not much. I mean, you might take a canoe over there or a boat or whatever, a helicopter, but you didn't have to fill out a flight log from New York City.
Right.
And so Peter Island, which Amway owns, there's been all kinds of stories, but if you look at the island, I always wonder why it was called Dead Man's Bay. I always wonder why they call twin sisters or little sisters islands and bays and seas and all this stuff, which they call it the streets of no names. There's a lot deeper meaning. What's interesting is it's closed today. So it closed the same time Epstein Island closed. And so this Ghislaine Maxwell, I'm sure she can probably tell. What's that?
I said Ghislaine, yes.
Yeah, Ghislaine.
That's the other Joey B.
Yeah. So, which he owns an island on the other side. If it's interesting, if you go on Snopes or whatever, you type in Dog Island. It doesn't say anything about Biden actually owning it, but you get into the details there. I am a fine-toothed person when it comes to details.
Yeah.
And so I watched the inauguration from the first administration going around.
Yeah.
And people don't realize, but you zoom in, he doesn't have his hand on a Bible.
Yeah, what was that big ass book? What was that?
That is the Masonic Bible. And that version of that specifically one, you can read the details on here and do your own homework, but it also has the spells of the Masonic order. The lodge has all these things in there. And you go back and you understand that all the presidents to a certain period in time before they got infiltrated by this group, this is what they pledged their allegiance to. And so just an interesting topic, but people got to do their own homework. I was watching something today on Instagram, and someone was saying, oh, you can tell everybody the truth, and they just can't accept it because their brain has been fragmented. And I think it's because of the media and TV. They're so quick to call you a conspiracy theorist without looking up facts for themselves.
Right.
And once you actually look up the facts, you kind of go, wow.
It blows my mind, these people who it's like, oh, you've called the CDC, you've called the FDA, you've spent hours and hours and hours reading patents and studies. No, so what the F do you know?
Right.
And when you go down these rabbit holes, next thing you know, I'm going to segue so I was using the word pandemic as early as April 2020. So I was just looking to see who has the patent for, who has the trademark for pandemic. And I was on the phone with my friend Ian Trottier, who's also a journalist. So he was telling me about his experience of having a name stolen from him, whatever. So I start looking to the trademark office and I find pandemic, a business continuity program. And I'm like, it was registered in 2015. So I look to see what the trademark encapsulates. It's all preparedness, even for man-made. It even includes the word spills in there. So then on April 28th, just 2 weeks ago, less than a month ago, they rebranded it. So then I look to see, this guy's name is Ron C. Lynch. He lives in the Villages in Florida. I look him up. I look at the phone number. One of the numbers is 3331. So from my experience, that these 3 3s, these 6 6s, these 17s, it's like we were here. Nobody knows we were here. A little FU if you're paying attention. Call the numbers, dead end, dead end, dead end. A lot of times they don't work. Then look into this guy has another company, daycare, child services, and it's a global company. It's like daycare services. So then I call on one number. This guy answers. He goes, "Oh no, it's not me. I'm not Ron. I know him though. He lives in blah blah." So then I pay to do a report. Call the guy. I was just curious. Hey, do you know that there's a movie named Plandemic? And then I found his LinkedIn. He has ties to GlaxoSmithKline, to Kellogg's, to J&J, to Pfizer. It's always the same familia. But next thing you know, we've been on, I've been doing research for an hour and a half. And because this must have taken you a really long time.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where over time, again, I'm one of those nerds where it's like, I'm fortunate. God gave me a gift, and I can walk through an airport. I can see someone's face that I saw in Florida 2 years ago. And if I walk through New York City, I can say, hey, I saw that guy's face in
You do
Florida.
pattern recognition.
Yeah, it's pattern recognition. So I started noticing these things in terms of my business too. And there's things that I was like, wow, that's just a really unique thing. And so going back to the whole aspect of one of our conferences, we had in General Colin Powell to speak to the Amway IBOs and talk about another wake-up call.
Just so people who don't know, IBO is an individual business owner.
Yeah, it's supposed to be an independent business owner.
Yeah.
More like an independent slave owner. But Colin Powell is not anything good at all. And so he's probably one of the guys you could probably orchestrate back through, his grouping as he rose up through these ranks as the Malta Knights. And so the Malta Knight organization, again, part of that whole group, he's running through Kleiner Perkins, which is also running the genetic test and the bioengineering. And he gets on stage and says, hey, I'm a brand new IBO in Amway. And I'm like, oh my God, that is scary as all get up. And there's people clapping. And I'm like,
of course.
What are you clapping for? Do you guys, that's like Dr. Evil right there in the plain sight. And people in the crowd are, oh, this is all great and everything. And I remember calling my upline. I'm like, do you understand what happened? He's like, oh, he's just a paid speaker. There's nothing connected at all. And I'm like, again, I filed it back in my head. And these are all things that I started one day after January 6th, they just all came together. And so it's pretty interesting.
I'm mindful of your time. We can wind it down because we've been speaking for. I'm just going to look at my notes. I did want you to touch a little bit about the transhumanism. I don't know if you have any images or anything to show.
Yeah, that pops up in terms of the same topic.
Yeah.
If you go into this, let me bring this up here real quick. So that transhuman topic comes into understanding the bioweapon labs, understanding what's happening in Ukraine, what was on the Russian border, all these things connected to metabiota and these medical groups. We call it the military industrial complex, but it's called the medical industrial complex.
What is the other companies in Genentech? What other company were you?
Hang on a second. I've got it in here. Can you see this on the screen?
Yes.
So you're talking about getting into the transhuman topics. So this has to deal with Henry Kissinger. So Henry Kissinger, he is the godfather of getting rid of maybe the gold standard. He's the godfather of introducing vaccines. If anyone understands the Georgia Guidestones,
Yeah, yeah. Okay, sorry. Yeah.
Georgia Guidestones, and reducing the population down to 500 million. All that is because of these guys. And so that's Henry Kissinger with the man right there,
Lousy.
Mr. Klaus Schwab. Then he realized they went to school together and they worked together. And it's just a very interesting thing. But so on the Amway property, here's Amway corporate headquarters, which is the Amway Grand Hotel.
Mm.
And on the same property across the street, they built the Gerald Ford Foundation. It's also in the Pyramid Triangle. But when you go through this, who sits on that board? Henry Kissinger, Alan Greenspan, Dick Cheney, Hank Meyer, Rich DeVos, Jay Van Andel, Steve Van Andel, Doug DeVos, Donald Rumsfeld. These guys. So now you're starting to see, okay, wait, there's a controlling partnership with the United Nations and Amway. And so what is the transhuman agenda?
Mm.
This is wild. Absolutely wild. So this is the Amway Grand. This is where it's at. That's Amway Grand Hotel. Well, across the street is a statue. This statue is totally symbolic of transhumanism. That transhuman agenda in the statue, if you understand the symbology, these triangles, you know, for the Trilateral Commission, for the Illuminati, for their order, this points in the same direction as what they built on their property, which is Graham Pharmaceutical, which is also Dr. Collins' research is connected to Pfizer, which is connected to Johnson & Johnson, and they built a Pfizer plant on their own property. So people are like, oh, how does all that work? Why are they doing all this? Because the Van Andel Institute has what's called gene mapping or genomes, or changing your DNA.
Mm.
And as you get into what they were doing with the DNA, that transhuman agenda, this group through the UN built, where's it at here? Oh, by the way, they had in Grand Rapids, they brought in Hillary Clinton along with Cheney and all these guys. I'm like, you guys literally are on the same page with everybody, which is wild. They administered all the Pfizer vaccines in this building, the DeVos place, which if you take out the zero, that's 33.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Monroe Street. Are they poking at someone's name?
Who's who? I didn't get that. Who are they poking? Monroe.
I don't know. I just put that together as Marilyn Monroe in the Kennedy group.
Just like I put Travis Scott is really Tavistock. It's not his real name. It's a play on Tavistock. Huh.
So if anyone understands this book here, Kathy O'Brien, was basically a sex slave, MK Ultra survivor of Gerald Ford. And a lot of that stuff took place in Grand Rapids when it happened. The book, if you read it, if you understand the whole thing, it's not conspiracy. You go through it and you understand what was happening there. This is actually a breakdown. When we talk about transhumanism, corporate headquarters. So now you got the Ford Foundation, and down here on the other side of town is the Pfizer plant.
Wow.
So they do all this stuff, and this group, if you understand between Kleiner Perkins and Coy, this table, Obama, John Doerr, Steve Wesley, Steve Jobs, all these guys, they knew exactly what their relationship was going to be with China, with Apple, and obviously bringing in Al Gore and all these groups to be able to orchestrate and pull this thing off. Well, Amway, they're partnered with Bill Gates, Microsoft. I think their grand plan was to say, hey, we're going to implement this thing. And so now you got George Bush there giving the Medal of Honor to Dr. Francis Collins. For what reason?
what is their role in surveillance? I believe that Bill Gates just said that now we have to invest, or he's going to invest money in surveillance technology.
Well, obviously they've been doing that for years. But if
Right.
you understand DARPA, you understand that these programs, these are not programs that Bill Gates put together either. These are programs the family members have put together, and they appointed people, whether it's the Rockefeller Foundation or organizations. So the Rockefeller Foundation is the Ford Foundation. So as you look through time, they look to migrate things. So if you look at Gerald Ford's second in his term, who did he appoint as vice president?
Who did he appoint? I don't know.
Rockefeller.
Really?
Yeah. So who's running the operations actually? It wasn't Gerald Ford, it was Rockefeller. So people look at these things and you just gotta be like, absolutely incredible. So Francis Collins is the name that no one talks about. Everyone wants to blame. Honestly, I think Fauci is becoming the fall guy.
Right. I would
Because
agree.
they don't want the higher ups.
Right.
Just like in Theranos, the girl, she took the fall for everything, but it was the family bloodlines going back to the Dutch, British royal banking families trying to hide everything of what they were doing because they know they got caught. So when Trump comes out on the lawn and says, "We caught them all, let's see what happens," this is where people have to assimilate, what's actually taking place right now, because we've never seen in history any of this chaos at this level ever happening. And a strong part of what you did in your incredible research with Dr. Lieber, that rabbit hole goes back up to Francis and goes down to Fauci. And so where did they transport this stuff working? Who has relationships in China and Wuhan? Who's in Harvard? Where's Amway in China? There's a lot of things that they can use in terms of, I don't know if they were traveling back on their network of transporting products and doing all those types of things. But I do know that this guy here, Congressman Upton, used to be the guy over that territory, that jurisdiction, who was handling all the stuff for the Van Andel Institute and getting paid. And so he had to step down. And I saw when I think Trump actually mentioned that he's going to be stepping down, and I think called him out as a rhino. But Congressman Upton just happens to be giving Fauci a nice little massage there during some of the trials. I think that was his way of saying, "Hey, buddy, it's going to be okay. We're not going to get busted. The DOJ's on our side."
Yeah, I mean, he's just, I call him the pandemic impresario. Where is Francis Collins? Do you know today? What is Francis up to?
I don't know. I don't. Last time I saw a picture was him and Bill Gates, and who was the other guy? The other owner, I think, from Apple. Again, it's the same thing. Like, where's Wexner? Where's some of these other people? I don't know. I do know that the things we've been told about certain other people, like, so for example, General Colin Powell, right? Supposedly died, but at his funeral, if he's a United States general,
right,
he should have had a U.S. flag over his casket.
But he didn't.
He had a Malta Knight flag on his casket, so that tells you who he pledges his allegiance to. And so, this is the main thing, like you talked about. Transhumanism. So transhumanism, Metabiota, Eco Health Alliance.
Yeah. So Metabiota, which Hunter Biden was involved in, a Metabiota that is out of the Ukraine. Eco Health Alliance, which was the buffer, the in between, with ties to SARS-CoV-2 creation. Yeah, what is Amway doing in the Ukraine?
It's a good question. Why are all their locations all over the country? So it's just an interesting topic. As the people get into all this stuff, these were things that stuck out to me. I get a Twitter feed from the Van Andel Arena. So I'd follow this stuff on my Instagram and be like, "Hey, this is cool. I want to follow my business." Wait a
Right.
second, they're promoting Trevor Noah and his new book with Dr. Fauci. I'm like, this is like something out of like what's that TV show? The
Black Mirror?
yeah, like just things that are just outside of normal. There's your guy.
Charlie.
There's Charlie. So again,
Charlie
where's
Freeman.
Charlie today?
Well,
Can he speak?
Can he speak? I kept on looking during the trial to see if there's any studies. So I had gone on Google Scholar and found 4 days, 4 days before he got sentenced to time already served, there was a paper about, there was a study that came out with his name on it regarding yet more nanowires being grown inside the brain. So point is, he was busy during this whole time. It's so convenient, excuse me, as Anne said, oh, look, it said in the court documents that his cancer is in remission. Very convenient. I'm going to look into this Van Andel Institute to see what they're up to. Interprofessional health? What's that, interprofessional health?
I don't know, but look at the symbolism. So symbolism will be their downfall. That upside down triangle is again the same symbol in that transhuman statue, which again, those buildings are connected to the children's hospital and just entirely gross stuff. But they have a whole DNA strand in the lobby.
Saw that. It's like, is it parading as Christmas decoration? No, it's supposed to be a strand, right?
It's supposed to be a strand. Again,
Oh, wait, sir, bring it up. It says Ascension. Did you write that?
Where's that?
Oh, it's a Q drop. How to protect your DNA, protect your Ascension. Yeah.
Yeah. So I would go through all these things and, so Orlando Magic basketball team.
Yeah.
Is Orlando Black Magic.
Really?
Partners with Disney, right? So why has DeSantis left these guys alone? Why has DeSantis now taking a large sum of money from the DeVos and Van Andels to run against Trump?
Why do people call DeSantis the Satan?
Why does the Orlando Magic basketball facility, which is in Orlando, Florida, why did they use that to inject the population with Pfizer vaccines? They used it as a place. Hey, everybody, come on in. Got to get your jab. You're more than welcome to get your jab. Hey, we got all the lines ready. Come on in. So they use that as an event center. And so,
what did Amway do in regards to the vaccine? What programs or campaigns to help get vaccines into
outside of, say, the corporate side of things, in India, they actually ran a video, which was really interesting. The video, they pulled it from the internet. We've got a copy. There's actually some pictures here of it. But this was in the video, how to adapt to the New World Order. And these are employees walking into work. They had to stand in their circles. And this guy's pointing a gun at the guy's head to take
disturbing
his temperature. And in the lunchroom, in the video, on their corporate video, they had to sit there and eat lunch separate from each other with their trays in circles. And so they had the plant there. But this was the most disturbing of all. And people understand symbolism. Some marketing guru, again, had to set this up.
Right.
So, again, they got the vaccine, right? The one girl showing this is the vaccine. So
another person is doing that. Just the of Satan. Well, she probably doesn't know.
So, and in addition to, they partnered with what's called MediBuddy over in India, which was basically the ability to let people know digitally that you had a digital ID and that all your medical records were placed underneath that digital ID to know if you took the vaccines or not. And that was all fronted by, again, Amway. And so I mentioned this to the IBOA board chairman.
Yeah.
He was like, "Oh, you're crazy. That's nuts. You're just seeing things." And I'm like, "No,
You're
like,
seeing things, Jude.
yeah." They called me a conspiracy theorist, and matter of fact, they disseminated and tried to destroy my group after that. And then they sent out a message to almost thousands of IBOs saying, "Hey, you and your wife are conspiracy theorists. They're mentally ill, right?" And they just ran totally nuts against us.
Could you
when I
sue
was just-
them for calling you mentally ill?
Well, let's just put it this way. Time has not run out yet. And there's a lot of things happening underneath the scenes to connect other things to other things. That's all I can say on that topic. However,
Yeah.
as you check out on the virtual office, you have the ability to buy a product and donate to the Red Cross.
Yeah, I'll never donate to the Red Cross.
Which they give funds to
Fine, but-
UNICEF and all these other organizations. I literally, when I look at their stuff, I'm like, wow, I don't know of another organization connected to more evil in the United States than this group and this organization of people. And so now the top leadership, after they destroyed my business, did all this other stuff, told me to shut up, sent me death threats, did all this other stuff. I got people in my group who go to their upline and they're like just in this fog. Like, I know what Judd's saying is true, but I can't leave my income because what are my wife and I going to do? Like,
yeah,
they need some help. They need some motivation.
right.
And I sent this thing out to a couple people. I'm like, this is called lucistrust.com,
Yeah.
.org, whatever.
Yeah.
See that triangle? That's the same foundation that's in Grand Rapids that's saying, hey, they're going to proclaim the light of Lucifer all over all of you guys. And if people understand in New York City what the UN has in the Black Rock altar that they have inside the temple they have there, the planning of what these guys were planning is so far. Like, you have to, like, you ever play remember pinball machines?
Yeah.
And if you hit it too hard, it would tilt. And the game stops.
Yeah.
Literally, that's what happened. Like, my brain just tilted, like, and everything froze. And I'm like, wait a second. Black Lives Matter, that is not a good organization. And Amway's funding the whole thing. This are actually pictures taken from a very, very decorated veteran at the police station down there. And it was burning my town down. I sent this to the chairman of the board at Amway, and what did he tell me? Shut up. And I was like, shut up? Like, wow.
He literally said, shut up?
Yeah, he told me shut up. And I was like, this is just nuts.
How many captured people are there? Go to the mirror and absolve yourself of your sins, because there is a God and you've compromised your souls. So many people. But what do you do? Like, for instance, I'll give you an example. There's someone in Costa Rica. She is I don't know her. Someone told me about her, works for Pfizer, but has 2 children and is ridden with guilt. And Pfizer owns her life. What does she do? People have to really, I'm targeted. I am attacked. They have dismantled my ability to make money. Like, imagine, Judah, I put a detox guide for vaccine injured people, and Smashwords, which is equivalent to Amazon, not only deletes the book,
deletes my 6-year profile and all my other books. So then you are not able to make money. And then I am gifted and being like, please give me some funds. Please support me. I'm risking my livelihood to speak out.
Right. That's
It's
exactly what
very
it is.
scary.
It's like after January 6th, they wiped me from the internet. All my pictures, profile, football
They
history,
did?
Facebook, because they probably didn't want us to tell the truth about J6. But I tell people too, this is another interesting fact. I went down to the DC to pray for our country with about 30 men and women, good, great people. And out of that, 6 of them got thrown in solitary confinement, lost all their families, business, all the stuff, lost their homes, went through trials, still going through trials, some at home with ankle bracelets on. And lo and behold, when the FBI came to my house, he's like, well, we know you're in the Amway business. We know that Bank of America, who's a partner of yours, they could route the transactions that you spent through certain areas. And then they pulled out a map of my cell phone of everywhere I went. And I said, good for you. I said, if you have any moral code or any moral understanding, you're going to take the truth back to your people and you're going to tell them what you saw. And what I saw was corruption that day. And it's just wild to think that these guys, Mike Pence, he blocked the quorum that day.
Yeah, exactly.
And who funded him? And if you look into this, who funded him? He was the gentleman who led the thing against General Flynn to get him out. He also, Mike Pence, also was the lead coordinator of all the COVID stuff. So a lot of people don't know. They are all blaming Trump and all this other type of stuff. But he handed it over, and literally, I think Mike Pence is going to take the fall for a lot of that stuff one day because they're going to realize he was the paid actor in the whole thing. But I mean, who knows? We're all finding this out.
Who knows? But the terror is real, and like for me, I'm having to deepen my faith. I don't know if I don't know how to ask properly, the proper way to ask for support or funding. I choose to speak out, and there are consequences. Like and I'm an empath, so I feel other people. The notion that there's people rotting in jail that have done nothing, that are God-loving human beings, while we're glorifying crooks like George Floyd and making them modern day messiahs. And there are people who, like even my friend Mark Grenon of Genesis Church and Chlorine Dioxide, it's been 3 years. He has not even had the right, the constitutional right to a speedy trial. Our constitution is being they're spitting in the face of the constitution. And this, I believe, is the real test, Judah. Where are you going to stand? Are you going to stand on the right side of God and consciousness?
Yep. Look, for example, CDS, what a great product. A miracle for people who understand it and know how to use it. Matter of fact, it was instrumental in helping me through some of my things.
Really? Beautiful.
And so you look at those types of things and you realize, wow, this is all against the military medical industrial complex, which, Eisenhower warned us about years ago that things were getting out of control. And Kennedy told the world what was happening and they killed him.
Yeah.
And so when we look at this whole thing, we come back to this and we go, man, what can we do? And honestly, it's good people like you, Maryam, who are standing up. And you know what? You're as bold as a lion. And when I heard you for the first time, my wife and I, we looked at each other and we like, that girl gets it. And you know what? All it takes is that little flame to populate, to light other flames, to say, you know what? Now you can have courage to go out there into the world and tell people the truth. I don't fear anybody because I went through a major health challenge and battle already. God already tested me in that area. And so I will fear no man because I know God stands in the gap for me. And you know what? That's just what I believe. So I got rid of my fears a long time ago. And who are we if we don't stand up for the truth? I heard uh, Lieutenant Colonel Pete Chambers. I don't know if you know who he is, but he was the gentleman who ran the entire army for the border. And people are coming across the border. He had 3,000 troops underneath him. And just recently, not too long ago, they told him to stand down. And they gave him different orders, and 4-star generals told him what to do. And he said, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stand up for what's right.
Yeah.
And he got in their face. And you know what? He made a huge statement to where all his 3,000 Army and Marines and all the people that are under his command, they're all standing with him. And those aren't stories you hear about in the news. But you know what? Even right now, we just heard this, is that the marshals right now are standing down against Biden's orders.
Really?
And so it's really interesting.
What orders are they standing
Yeah,
down?
they're just giving orders to go do certain things, and they say, no, that's against the Constitution. That's against our rights. And people are waking up left and right every single day, because you know what? There's people like us that are out there educating people on the truth. People are getting to these reawaken conferences where they're like, hey, this is awesome. If you want a little bit more, I agree with Clay. He keeps it somewhat vanilla because he's got an image that he's trying to portray. But if you want to get more information, go to like the Red Pill Conference. Go to some of these other things where, there's lots of conferences out there that can educate you on truth. And a lot of it all comes back to, like you talked about, the medical world. If they can control your DNA, manipulate your DNA, and get rid of God's destined image of who you were designed in the image of, then they own you. But what we're doing is you and I, we're standing up in the middle of that.
Yeah, Judith. So this is incredible. So since you've kind of realized the organization that you've spent so much time and energy, what has happened to your downline? What's the dealio now?
Well, I submitted this letter at the corporation to the chairman of the board. And
I mean, this presentation, this 85-page document?
Yeah, he got it all. And even here, like Lady Gaga came into one of our conferences. This is her speaking to all the Amway IBOs, and I believe it was a ritual. That's a demon she tried to erect on stage in front of all of our people, which I do. I think there's mind control in a lot of that stuff.
Yeah.
But Lady Gaga there, again, the Monster Ball. Katy Perry came into the one in Dubai for Amway.
Wow.
So now you're looking at this. If you understand.
Oh, look, they're wearing devil's horns. How sweet.
If you understand Satan's brides in terms of how the Luciferian church runs, again, you got these families right here standing with Katy Perry. Got these families here standing with Katy Perry. In her videos, Dark Horse, if you watch it, it tells you exactly what they're planning.
Dark Horse is a song?
Yeah, Dark Horse. You go on to, it's right here. Boom, we can click this. Matter of fact, let's see if it'll open. Get past this intro here.
Sure.
Oh no, that's
Did you
the
film
Katy Perry. That's the actual
conference. In regards to what you said about, like, when I get on the stage and I feel that I have a gift of gab to be able to, and for how many, I would be rich for every time someone said, I love your passion. But since my dad blocked me and he's a Christian, it hurt my feelings. It really hurt me. And my faith is being tested because it's just been like a 3-1 punch. And I wonder, like, even all of these interviews, like, I don't make money I'm not monetized. I'm not driven by money, but I need people's support. And I don't know if I'm given an opportunity, I know that we, the people, would support, but that's not as sustainable. Like, someone actually told me to change professions.
Right.
I'm 50 years old. Are you kidding me? I have another profession, just functional medicine and working with people. But it's like, I remember years ago, my former business partner said and I'm like, but I'm a journalist. It defines me. Like, I love what I do. Um, and then, they target you and they attack you, and then you're not creating, which is what makes us special, and we're not bots, is the creation aspect that an AI can never do. They just keep you in damage control. And I'm not saying I'm special. Look at what they've done to you. I know a handful of targeted people.
Yeah, and so, really from that though, like for example, I submitted this letter to this guy who I thought I trusted my family with. And the next day he sent me a cease and desist order and tried to get me into kangaroo court to terminate my business. And so
What
22 years.
what do you mean by that? Sorry, I didn't mean to. What do you mean by kangaroo court? You mean to go to the court systems that are all kangaroo courts?
No, they try to get you into a courtroom. And if you understand the politics in Michigan for today, they own the judge. They own the whole system. So how do you win? You win by telling the truth. The truth is the truth, and truth is power. And people are waking up by the groves by understanding the truth. And I don't care about a courtroom and a law room and all this other type of stuff. I know what God's laws are. I know what God's truths are. And as we wake up the lions all around the world, people, they won't be able to hide from all this stuff. And if we can basically educate the people on this, here's what's going to happen. People are going to say, you know what, I'm going to pick a lane, and that causes to defund them, and they got to start over. Guess what? We've won. And so we're just moving into those categories in terms of understanding.
Yeah.
But it's like, these are all these other topics that are just gross. They're
Yes.
related and they're
Yes.
connected.
Yes.
This is the toothpaste. Character for the toothpaste. And wait a second. Why is Lady Gaga singing for us again? It's just really interesting. So my battle cry for a lot of people was really to wake up the lions, to tell people that say, hey, you know what? Luke 8:17, right? It says, for nothing is hidden that will not be disclosed, nor is anything secret that will not become known and come to the light. So we stand on that. And as you and I are going into these things and we're declaring these truths to people, you know what? My pastor said this the other day, is you turn on the light switch and watch the cockroaches run.
That's
because
right.
there's more of us than there is of them. And you know what? What'd they take from me? A couple $1,000s a month, that type of stuff. I can replace money. It's not a big deal. But I'm not going to compromise my character, my word to the people I said I hope they trust in me. And what I'm looking for is I'm looking for other people to stand up. I'm looking for other people to say, you know what? Dude, you're right. Hey, I don't care about being right, but you know what? I'm going to stand up. I'm not going to let them roll over us and take our liberties, our freedoms, our First Amendment, our Second Amendment, the 10th Amendment, all these things that say, hey, you know what? We can. And you know what? We're organizing. And it was just awesome being with you down in Miami and taking in that atmosphere. And I'm telling you what, man, when the Great Awakening film comes out, Pandemic 3, we've got some of these other films that are coming out. These people won't be able to hide anymore. And guess what? We don't fear you. We're taking ground, and guess what? God wins. And so, I just claim a hedge of protection over Maryam and myself, all the people that are influencers in that community, and it's awesome. I love being on this side. It's so cool.
Yes, there's no question that it's like, am I on the right side of God? No, there's no question. Unfortunately, many supposed Christians have been captured, the churches have been captured, but at least we can sleep at night because we have a consciousness. Thank you, Judah. Where do you want to send people to your work, or
I'm ironing these things out because I'm starting to realize that there's a way, like you were talking about, to self-fund the things you're doing. At the weekend, I heard somebody another gentleman who was in the army, who's now uh, diversified himself, who understands the warfare that's going on. And so I'm getting some things up and off the ground. But there's products, there's good companies, there's good people doing things. You gotta educate yourself and research things and get around good people. But there's platforms that we can do to self-fund truth. And you know what? There's going to be new media companies that populate. There's going to be new things that are going to come out of these hard times. And you know, it may be pretty hard for now, but I know things are going to prevail. But from my perspective, I relaunched some social media stuff that's typically under Judah A Lion. So people can find me on pretty much all the social medias under Judah A Lion.
You're on Twitter? I don't think.
Yep, I'm on Twitter, and so I've seen your posts. So I
Are
love
we
that.
following each other?
You haven't followed me yet, but
Judah a Lion?
I'm just a peon. You've got over 20,000 people, so.
Dude, I would have had way more. They take people away. I'm still about the
I mean,
numbers are all bullshit.
Yep, they all go down and
plus I'm not like that. I don't look at the numbers because I know they're, in journalism school, they tell you use big numbers like 101 ways to get a man to be flashy.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean crap. Especially when you know Judah a Lion, all one word.
Judah A _ Lion.
Okay. Judah's with an H? No.
Lion of Judah. JUDAH.
Yeah.
A.
Yeah.
_ Lion.
You found it. Okay, I found you. Okay. Awesome.
Instagram as well.
Yes.
For as long as possible. And Facebook, people can find me out there as well. But what's interesting is they don't want to touch this with a 10-foot pole. So
it's like the George Floyd documentary.
They'd love to pull you and I both in a courtroom, and I would say, bring it on, because we're going to go through disclosure. And once
here are my receipts. Mic drop.
Exactly. So we're taking ground one day at a time, and it's awesome to see beautiful ladies like you who have heart, who have passion. And you know what? Your father, here's one thing that I've known about God, is that God is our father. And as a child, I've got my kids. Whenever my daughter asks for something, my heart yearns to be able to provide for her and bless her.
Did you ever imagine as a good father ever doing that? You should be so proud of me.
Exactly. And he will. He'll turn. I will say this, though, is a discovery.
He's jabbed. Yeah.
Is a lot of the churches have been captured by a Masonic order. And a lot of these big name churches, when Clay Clark throws out Joel Osteen or some of these other people, is that there are controlled oppositions out there, and they're not talking about the jabs. They're not talking about the J6ers. They're not talking about Donald Trump. They're not talking about freedom, because their goal is the captured operation is for them to bring in their timeline of the revelations. So revelations in the Bible, who knows in terms of its ordeal, but you know what? There's people trying to force that timeline, not on God's calendar, but on man's calendar. And it's completely wrong. And a lot of these churches, what they do is they take donations, and they're also paying in dues. These dues are the hierarchy of this mob. And you know what? They're getting their orders right now. Matter of fact, we just had in Columbus, Ohio, some Christian organization brought in Mike Pence and brought in Betsy DeVos, of all people, to talk to their church about, hey, also they're making their run for presidency and vice presidency. And you're like, how disgusting. I hope people are waking up to what's going on and would never vote for these people ever. But that's a discovery we're gonna all have to walk through here pretty soon.
Really have to develop a really intense discernment mechanism. So thank you, Judah, for your time. I will tell people I don't usually do this. Please like and subscribe and share. And if you can, every little bit counts, especially right now in my life. So even a virtual hug, a nice kind word, a share, just to say, to acknowledge, like at the conference, to have people like, I'm looking for you, or Maryam, where have you been? And be like, what? I'm like producing so much work. I haven't gone anywhere. But it's very touching to be able to be with other people who love God, to connect, to see that we're not alone, and the vibration of gathering right together.
Exactly. It's that vibration, and you ooze positive vibration and your energy being around you.
That's nice. I've been told that I'm acting like a victim lately, and it's really difficult to share and say I need help right now, because I want to be inspiring and positive. And so thank you.
You know what? We got to deal with things in the world that are right. And you know what? I believe blessings are coming to you because you did the right thing. And when this whole thing breaks, guess what? I believe you're going to be promoted.
Yeah, well, I'm not doing it to get promotions, but I'm doing it for my consciousness and my spirit that is eternal.
And that's what I'm talking about, that type of promotion. I'm not talking about worldly type of promotion.
Yeah, God bless you, Judah. It was lovely to see you last week, and this is an incredible presentation. I'm honored that we finally got to share it, and I'll put the links that you sent with your bio. And God bless you. Thank you.
Hey, you as well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Something has prompted you to embark on a journey toward a healthier you. Perhaps it was a health scare, or the chemicals you want to avoid in conventional foods, or maybe you simply want more energy. But with so many different types of diets, lifestyle disciplines, pricey supplements that claim they antioxidize your life, and vendors that are more interested in their bottom line, who can you really trust? Honey Colony brings people together who want to optimize their health through trustworthy information and top-notch products. We bring together quality vendors, renowned nutritional experts, and health-conscious people. Learn, share, and shop health.